When Joanie Schirm retired, she began the adventure of her lifetime, traveling through time to meet her parents and grandparents. Along the way, she became a detective, a scholar, a forensic genealogist, and an author.
I tell people I have kind of a common malady. It's called the Roots disease. And I think we all have it. It's sort of dormant, but around your 60th birthday, you start really kind of looking at your diminishing future maybe, and you start thinking about the past in a different way.
Joanie always knew the past held family secrets, but uncovering the details was never easy.
This street divides the ghetto just about in half.
In 1993, when Schindler's List came out, I went from Orlando to Indiana to see if my father would go see the movie with me, which was crazy now I realize. And it was the loudest no I'd ever heard him say to me. But that night he sat down and he typed up a list of the 44 relatives who he knew had perished and where he thought they'd perished in the year they were taken away.
But he would offer little more, and 7 years later, when both of her parents died, Joanie feared the real family story died with them.
And they died within 2 days of each other of natural causes and had long, wonderful lives, been married 60 years.
When Joanie met with her brother and sister to go through their parents' belongings, the story began to slowly unravel.
And we decided we would start with a little Chinese box that they had carried around with them. And when we opened it, there were the beginning of what turned out to be 400 letters written from 1939 to 1946 by 78 different letter writers. 80% of them are in Czech.
Secret letters between her father and his family and friends. Letters from those who remained in Czechoslovakia and others from those who journeyed to the far corners of the world to escape the Nazis. Joanie had the letters translated, and they reveal both tragedy and triumph. Her father, Oswald Holzer, was a young doctor in the Czechoslovakian army when the Nazis arrived in 1939 and incorporated his unit.
And he, like all the Czechs, didn't want to be a part of that.
Right.
And so he ended up writing himself an order to leave to go inspect the meat, which he was allowed to do. And he wrote it in Czech, handed it to a German guard. The German guard said to him in German, "I can't read this, will you read it to me?" And my father said, "I could have read it without looking at it, but I read it to him." Clicked his heels, let him out.
He wore riding pants that day so he could quickly remove his army jacket and blend in with the crowd. He bought a train ticket home to Prague and escaped to see his beloved parents. Nearly 70 years later, Joanie discovered the riding pants in an old chest.
These are my inspiration. When I started writing, it was all new to me. I always wanted to write, wrote when I was little kind of thing, and I was overwhelmed with the collection, how much there was and what I was going to do and how I was going to write the story and everything. And a friend of mine said one day, knew about the pants and all, said, "You should just go upstairs one day and you should just strip down and put on the pants and wear the pants, and that'll give you your inspiration." And I did that.
What do they represent? Obviously his ingenuity, his determination.
They really represent everything. I think mostly they represent the fact that my brother, sister, and I exist. I mean, if he hadn't done this, he would have missed his opportunity. It was very hard to get out of Czechoslovakia after a little while. And, it meant everything. It meant life going on.
Inspired by the pants, Joanie continued her research and began writing her book. The letters reveal that her father stayed in Prague less than 2 months before making another escape, this time all the way to China, one of the few countries accepting those of Jewish heritage. There, he met and married the daughter of American missionaries. Within 4 months, they were on the President Coolidge evacuation ship, a luxury liner that carried Americans from Asia as the Japanese became more aggressive in advance of Pearl Harbor. The newlyweds lived in the U.S. until 1944 when they moved to South America to work in the oil fields. In 1946, they moved back to China before returning to Chattahoochee, Florida to raise their family. It was there in 1948 that Joanie was born and her father built this chest.
And he made it to look as Chinesey as he could. I think he did pretty well.
It's a cultural mix, just like your family a little bit.
It is. It definitely is.
When her parents died, Joanie inherited the chest, and it sat in her house mostly untouched for 8 years.
And suddenly one day I think of the chest, and I go and I sit down on the floor and I open it up. This is what I saw, and I didn't recognize what it was. And in there is what turns out to be the last letter that my grandfather wrote to my father. It was the 21st of April, 1942, and my grandparents were taken away the 24th from Prague to Terezín.
A letter written 3 days before Arnost Holzer and his wife, Joanie's grandparents, were taken to a concentration camp. A letter to his only child that began, "My dear boy."
My dear boy, today we are leaving for a gathering point to follow the fate of those unfortunate people in 3 to 4 days who since last October have been gradually chased out of their homes and sent to concentration camps, robbed of everything they had. This happened to us as well, and we had to leave all the ground floor and its furnishings, a flat that had always been such a cozy home to us. Carrying only the necessary clothes, we are setting on a journey, not knowing the day of our return or when and where we can be united again. I am not certain whether I will see you ever again, so I decided to write these lines as my goodbye to you. I had a lot of failures in my life. However, I have tried when possible to spare you from my shortcomings and help you become a doctor, a profession you always sought. You have always been a good boy, and we are proud of you. I wish for you to find full satisfaction in your profession. I also wish that your profession of curing doesn't just become a source of wealth for you, but that you yourself become a benefactor to the suffering humanity. With warm kisses and greetings, I bid both you and Ruth a farewell. I remain your loving dad.
3 days later, they were taken to Terezín outside of Prague and then transported by rail to the Sobibor extermination camp in occupied Poland. Within minutes of their arrival, they were forced by Nazi officers into gas chambers. 2 of the 250,000 men, women, and children murdered in Sobibor.
I just always try and imagine him sitting there, and writing that letter to his son. It's just amazing. And then I imagine my father receiving it.
A letter her father didn't receive until 1945, 3 years after it was written. A final goodbye asking him to not be bitter, but live a life filled with love, hope, and compassion, qualities he not only embraced, but passed on to his children.
I wasn't raised at all with harboring any fear for the world or hate for any certain people or anything. I mean, I came out of it in a wonderful way.
Joanie has finished her book, My Dear Boy, A Discovery of a Lifetime. She's hoping it will not only pass on her grandfather's message of hope and compassion, but will also inspire others to begin their own search to discover, honor, and preserve their past.
If you have any sense of curiosity in life, you will be amazed because you really start going nowadays with the web and with these ancestry sites that you can go to. You keep going and going and going. It's like going down a rabbit hole or whatever, and you find amazing things.
Joanie Schirm found herself, and as she uncovered the tragic and triumphant story of her family's past, she discovered the unexpected moral to her story.
And I kept thinking of here was a man knowing that he's going off to his death, that's how he looked at the world. And I felt like that's the way we all need to look at the world. It's helping one another. It's just that simple.